Okay, greetings everyone, and welcome to another Pan African Community News live update. Sorry for the bit of a wait. As you know, we are ironing out some of the technical gremlins, and it looks like Facebook thought that we'd hacked into our own account, and hence it disabled us when we tried to go live. What is today's date? Is it the 27th of February, 2022? I'm in the studio with the wonderful Sister Oleander. I don't even want to give her a wave over there. And as usual, you are welcome to share comments online and we'll try and answer them. The program's an hour long. We're going to go through the news, updates of what's taken place over the last couple of weeks. We won't catch everything because there has been quite a lot. And it's an hour-long program, and it's wasted 3 minutes connecting to our internet providers. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to, as usual, start off with a slide and move through. I think that was quite. And I'm going to start really with what's a really tragic piece of news for many of you who knew him. The 31-year-old founder of SBTV, Jamal Edwards, joined the Ancestors. It's awful age for a young person to, for anyone to go at any time, to be honest with you. But many young artists and many young people will recognize him as a pioneer who launched his channel and launched so many careers. There's been endless number of tributes to him on social media, which is really good and quite fitting. His mother made a tribute. I think she does this Loose Women's program, one of these daytime chat programs. She's made a comment on there as well. And also what Jamal did, what a lot of people don't know, is that he also supported organizations that dealt with issues like mental health, and just kind of like gave chats, gave foundations, gave donations, etc. as well. Now, we don't know the reason of his passing. It's a sudden illness from what we've heard. But we know the Ancestors will be pleased with his work. The next passing I want to talk about is our sister, Miss Lillian John Baptiste. She's an elder, aged 75, and she was found dead in her kitchen beside bins. She'd been there for quite some time. When the police actually went inside, her body had decomposed quite severely, so it made an autopsy very difficult to ascertain the reason for death. She'd been missing for, I think it was around 2 years. So I think it was first raised in 2018 to 2019, and a formal complaint was then processed 2020, but they found her, sadly, and she's now joined the Ancestors. So, trying to give some more positive stories that's taking place. There has been this new talent contest, which is called Heart of Talents, taking place in Wembley. And I think that the final, or the semi-finals at least, are going to be taking place in the Box Park, Wembley. And it's been organised by a woman called Jasmine Dell. And she is really interested in helping young people to avoid the life of any kind of life which gets them involved in any kind of criminality or puts them at risk of violence. And so this process, this competition, which she argues is actually not about competition, it's not about winning, is really a showcase of their talent, a showcase of their creative genius, and it's just a way of actually helping young people realize that they have much to offer society, and even though they're often painted as a stain on society, as nothing but trouble, that they are often very talented, very gifted, and just don't have the platform to shine. So I just want to big up Jasmine Dell for this platform, and I think it's been running for a while, and the final I think is going to take place in a couple of months' time. So keep an eye out on that as well. This is a really horrendous story in the sense that this was a teenager, 18-year-old named Ayan Muhammad. And she was actually left heartbroken after she found out that, well, basically she was walking through a park in Swiss Cottage. It's an open space. She was followed by a man, a European male, and he just punched her in the face. Just punched her in the face. didn't say anything. After that, he started to walk away. She cried out, screamed out, and the onlookers did nothing. No one helped her. No one came to console her. No one stopped the aggressor. So she's quite traumatized by the experience, not just the experience of the assault, which she believes was caused was a racist Islamophobic attack because she wears a veil and a abaya, which are Islamic items of clothing. But she's also upset by the fact that there was a level of indifference towards her. There was there was no compassion from anyone in the surrounding area. Now the police are looking and trying to find, getting any leads about who this was and what happened. And for me, it's just a reminder of the increased heightened danger that women are facing in society right now from these kind of these men who are just not just misogynistic, but also deeply racist. So please be careful out there. And I'm sorry, our young sister, this young teenager, has had to go through this ordeal. And just for those of you who see something like this and are actually frightened to intervene, can I just say that all you need to do if you're too frightened to intervene, I mean, you could intervene or go to her after the assault to make sure she's okay. But if you don't want to intervene and you're too frightened to, then just pick up your phone and record the incident. Take a snapshot so that there's actually some evidence of the perpetrator, because that would have helped inquiries to find out, who had done it and to actually get him brought to justice. So you listen to me, Toyin Agbetu, the Pan African Community News channel. We're just going through some of the news over the last couple of weeks, and I'm just going to keep going through some of the stories. Now, this next one is by, I found this on the BBC. This is from a story covering the story of Rita Eze. Now, this was a really interesting story, and I won't go into all the details behind it, but this sister here, she wanted to go to Nigeria to attend the funeral of her father who passed away. I think he is in his 80s. She hadn't seen him for quite a while, and her passport expired just as she was leaving, but she was able to go, and she was reassured that there won't be a problem on the other side because they can renew it while she was there, and she'd be able to come back in. Well, actually, what happened when she ended up in Nigeria is that it wasn't plain sailing. She did get it renewed in the end after 6 weeks of wrangling, but she ended up being sent into a shelter because they found out she had COVID. She'd already been vaccinated, but she did catch COVID as well. And it was such an ordeal that she went through. She ended up missing her father's funeral. And so, she came back to the UK, I think it's on December the 11th. It's just before, it's before, a couple of weeks before the whole Christmas festivities. And she found out that she'd contracted malaria because she hadn't been able to take malaria tablets while she was actually in the secure accommodation for people who they were kind of isolating. And so this was a mixture of bureaucracy, a mixture of misunderstanding of language, all these kind of different things on both sides. Very much in Nigeria. I'm not going to blame the British government in this particular instance. Very much over there, kind of like about what was permissible, what should have happened. And so she had a malaria and it passed. Thankfully, she's okay now. But I just wanted to highlight that. And because for many of us who are in the diaspora, we often, over the last 2 years, we've had to put on hold a lot of ideas of traveling back to our families to see relatives and just to console them for funerals, for weddings, and all these kind of things. And I just want to remind you that even though things look like they're moving towards what some people would call normality, and I really hate that term about moving towards normality, because what was normal before was quite toxic and quite Afrophobic. I want everyone to be cognizant of the fact that there are still quite a lot of problems taking place, and that the policies are not universal in all other countries. So if you do have to go home, or if you had to, you are traveling, double check, make sure you have all contingency plans in place, because if it can go wrong, there's a great possibility that it will go wrong. And talking about going wrong and talking about people from the diaspora, let's talk about what happens to people who try to make a life in the UK. Now, you may have not seen, there was one of these committees, these select committees, I think they call them, where they scrutinise issues that are of public interest. And what we found out in a recent report and a recent scrutinisation is that there was a group called MITI, and MITI has apologized because they've been exposed, or their staff has been exposed of actually sending out racist, xenophobic messages, and then it's a scattergun approach. I mean, they've been homophobic. They've attacked Priti Patel. They've attacked Diane Abbott. They've just been Chinese people. I mean, from xenophobia to Afrophobia. They've hit everybody. It's been quite disgusting. Now, you might think, well, okay, we know there's racism inside, the Home Office. Well, this is actually not the Home Office. This is a firm. MITI is a firm that's contracted by the Home Office and in this particular contract, which I think is worth 525 million, that's £500 million over 10 years, is actually to escort people while they're deporting them out of the UK. And so we're kind of getting a sense of the kind of attitudes by seeing those texts and reading those texts of the staff that are engaged in this work. I'm not going to repeat some of the things that they've said. I'm not going to, I don't need to, it's all in the public domain. But it's very interesting that these large corporations who set up these groups, this group was called the Escorts Meet and Greet. It's been disbanded now. It's very interesting, these groups who do this kind of work receive so much money from the public purse. I mean, this particular contract was worth £500 million, but from what I read on another article, overall, I think it's around £2.5 billion they have in various contracts with the Conservative Party, which is now the government. So Phil Bentley, who is the CEO, he has apologized. It's his image you can see on the screen, and saying that they'll do their best to repair what they can, blah blah blah. There's no space for racism. I think we know all the platitudes, so we can't use them, etc. But this is again racist Britain, essentially. This is what we're dealing with when you have a government that enables these kind of attitudes. Oh, okay, so where to next? Let's take it from the side of the continent, and we have the story of Ebenezer Wikina, who's actually challenging the British government over its what they call IELTS policy. I don't know if it's an acronym, but basically it's a policy that says that if you're going to come to the UK, even as a student, you must speak English. If you're not from a majority speaking English speaking language, you've got to take this test. Now, this test, which you're forced to teach, I'm telling you, many indigenous people indigenous to the region would fail, is expensive. It's kind of like a couple of months' salary. I think it's around £160. And so, you've got to take this test before you can come in. Even if you pass the test only lasts for a couple of years, and you've got to redo it again. And so what our brother here, Ebenezer, is saying is that actually, no. I mean, first of all, there shouldn't be a test. And why is Nigeria on this list of not majority English-speaking countries? It doesn't make sense. And if anyone who's been to Nigeria will know that English, unfortunately, I say unfortunately deliberately, is actually the lingua franca. Because even though there are 160 different dialects and different languages, from the Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, essentially, English is the glue. That this is part of the legacy of colonialism that keeps the nation together it's used as a trading language. And this is the case in many Anglophone countries, as it is with Francophone countries using French as the lingua franca. So this is, again, just another racist policy that is embedded in the British judicial and immigration system. And well done to for campaigning to get rid of it. I'm not hopeful. Anyone who can help. I think I signed a petition like a few hours ago. Do what you can, but it's quite strong. Okay, and while we're on this international flex, I want to talk about the medical student Stella Masiya. I hope I pronounced that right. She's from Leicester, and she's postponed her wedding. She's actually currently in Ukraine. She was going to get married to her fiance in Ukraine, and of course we now know about the onslaught, the Russian onslaught that's taking place, the invasion in that region. And unless somebody starts making comments and asking questions about the particular issue, I'm not going to labour the point, because I feel quite passionate about this. That as much as I am, I'm really upset and angry about what's happening to Ukrainians who are living there. What I'm finding equally as unpalatable is the racist rhetoric that's been tolerated and in many cases encouraged by mainstream media, that is putting forward this notion that this is a war. Well, first of all, it's not a war. Russia has overwhelming power than Ukraine. It's just like a bully. That's one issue. But more so, what's really making me sick is this whole idea that Ukrainian lives, when they are European, are more valued than any lives of anyone else in any other conflict all over the globe. And what I mean by that is that you can go into social media and you'll find news clips of people saying things like, I can't believe this. This isn't taking place in a third world country. It's taking place in a civilized country. It's taking place in Europe. You're hearing people say things like, I can't believe this. It's like, I'm so emotional. These are blue-eyed, blonde-haired people who are facing this assault. I mean, how bad, the things are just awful. Things are really bad. So this is the kind of undercurrent of the racism that's taking place with this Ukrainian conflict and humanitarian disaster. And it's quite sickening to think that even while people are facing kind of like a humanitarian disaster of this nature, where borders should be open to let refugees escape and migrants move to safety, what we're finding is that the racism that exists in national states is actually replicated on an international level across Europe and wider afield. Sister Oleandi, I think you want to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this morning, whilst watching the news, someone made reference to the fact that this isn't Uganda, and why? What does that have to do with Uganda or any country in Africa or the diaspora at large? And it just sort of goes back to what you were saying, that somehow people are just so upset that this is happening in one of their cousins' countries, I suppose, and it's something which they rejoice when it happens in Africa, when something like that would happen. I suppose it's talking about the Army back in the day, but I just think it's crazy.
Yeah, and I hear you. I mean, I saw some things on the news and I had to turn it all off. I couldn't expose myself to anymore where people making similar comments. So it's Trevor Phillips, David Lammy having an argument about jaguars and truffles and whether sanctions on these things were going to stop Putin, and it was just like a ridiculously puerile debate. And I think it's just the point. No one wants what's happening to Ukrainian people to continue. There is enough, military power. There's enough resources amongst NATO to actually intervene. But the truth of the matter is that they don't actually care about the Ukrainian people. You can see that by the fact that the British government is actually things. It's actually about who runs things. And Russia is flexing. Russia is just saying, we're not Ukraine to be at the door. I don't get into geopolitics, but that's take half the program. But I just want to say this is a Pan-African perspective. It's a Pan-African news. And so I just want to just touch on that point where we've got to sometimes sit back and watch and see the people who are allies and see how animated they get over the best of the European allies and how it means nothing if it's in Palestine, if it's in Africa, if it's Aboriginal communities in Canada or in America. Let's just see what's happening. It's just the hypocrisy just stinks. Anyway, let me move on. So this is a continuation. I going to move on. Well, fate conspires to make sure I stay here. Let me blow this one up a little bit here. And so what we are seeing is increasing Afrophobia during this conflict. There is no doubt about that. And I use this story as a little bit of evidence, and just to kind of give you some background, is that this is from an Indian newspaper that's saying that after discrimination that's faced by Indian students, that it's actually African people in Ukraine who are facing worse forms of discrimination. So they're being turned back at the border. People are saying, literally, Ukrainian border guards are saying to them, no, you can't go. Only Ukrainians, they have to come through first. Once the Ukrainians have gone out, then you can come through. And you see, in that choice of language, and that those choice of action, which is clearly racist, it's saying that no matter what our nationality is, no matter how much, how long we've been in the space, no matter how much contribution we're making, in many cases, this is like a medical student who's actually like studying and helping with healthcare, that we are never at home in these spaces. And I'm the part of it doesn't even want to talk about this right now, because while people are getting hurt, I kind of don't want to kind of like sidetrack away from the discussion. But we have to be cognizant that Afrophobia has not gone away, and Afrophobia exists on all sides of the political spectrum, even on the left as much as it does on the right. And that's kind of like what this story and what this disaster is starting to throw up. Let me move on. And this is, I say, a good news story, but it's a long time coming. And some of you may know that two of the artifacts that have been looted from Benin, they call them the Benin bronzes, and in this case, it's a figurine of an Oba and of a cockerel, has actually been returned to Benin after the University of Aberdeen and Cambridge University's Jesus College decided to return them and give them back. Now, the decision was made last year, I think it was in November, October, but it's only just gone back last week or so in a ritual. So it's returned back home. And this is a really important story. We don't really hear much about these things because, of course, everyone's eyes is focused on Partygate and now Ukraine Gate. But the reality of the situation is that we're seeing some actors, in this case, it's universities, academic sites, which have museums, who are returning plundered artifacts that have been acquired through ruthless violence. And when I say violence, we're talking about the murder of hundreds of people in these acts. And this is a right step. This is the right thing to do. There is a problem, however. The problem is that not everyone wants to return these acts. For some people, it's very much they're like trinkets. Like when the Iraq War was taking place and they had Guantanamo Bay, and you had soldiers making human pyramids and taking photographs and posing. Or if you think about the police sergeants or the police officers with Nicholas Small, where they saw dead bodies inside, so they pose and take these selfies. There are some people who are just kind of sick in that way, mentally and spiritually deficient. And one of the things that's happening over the last couple of weeks is that this artwork by Victor Ekihimanoa, and I apologize if I've mispronounced his name. He's a noted artist, and he's really engaged in this amazing piece of art, which is around over 6 feet tall, made out of these rosemary beads, and it's going to go into London. I say it's going to go into, it's actually in St. Paul's Cathedral. I'm going to hope to drop by there. And it's next to a plaque which celebrates the white supremacist who was responsible for the Benin raid. And the reason why I say this is actually not a good story is not because of anything to do with the work of the artist, because what he's doing is contextualized. The representation of the opera is actually far more grand and bigger than the plaque that's celebrating the white supremacists. But it's that the church itself has made the decision that it's going to follow the government guidelines of what they call retain and explain. So it's not going to take down the plaque celebrating the white supremacist. And so the artwork is actually put next to it to draw for it and to say that this is another context, another discussion to have around this evil. But the evil stays. And I think there's something quite off with this, that you're having a university where you're having, scholars who are saying, actually, we're going to give back something that was plundered, that was, taken through moral means. And you have the moral center of the nation, the church, St. Paul's Cathedral, which, we saw during lockdown, trying to do many different charitable acts to kind of like keep the nation together. And we see that actually its leadership level is still morally bankrupt because, they don't need to follow the government's directions on this because the plaque's actually inside the church. We can remove it. They've removed it off the internet. I can't find it anymore. So that's why I'm going to go down and take a photo of it before they try and hide it. But this is the kind of discussions that are taking place. Let me move on to the next story. And this one is very close to my heart. It's a story about sickle cell. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke about a new treatment that's come on top. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. It ends with the word something. It's a new treatment that's not as toxic as my brain's just done a freeze. What's the name of that? The toxic one for the cancer? Hydroxyurea, thank you. It's not as toxic as hydroxyurea. It wasn't developed for cancer. And what's happened is that the government has actually, or NICE has actually okayed it for use in the UK. Now, there's around 300 people who are now going to be using it. And the Sickle Cell Society has said that actually they're hoping that's going to increase to around 450 people who are going to be using it. So there are some benefits, there's some movement on looking forward or looking, making progress on issues to do with sickle cell. This is all I'm steering really is because the National Lottery has actually donated £100,000 to a sickle cell and thalassemia community group in Wales, which is amazing. We definitely need more funding. And if we want to know why these groups need more funding, there's a story which you should be able to see on the page. Let me get the picture up a little bit bigger so you can see it. There's a story on the page over here about a young man named Tyrone, and he had sickle cell. He had been going to the hospital managing his crisis for since he was a child. And one time he went into hospital, came out, and you might think, well, that sometimes happens with sickle cell, but actually the reason why he didn't come out was not because he had an acute chest crisis. It was because someone didn't really understand the condition that much, and when they set up the PCA, they bungled it. So he didn't get his pain relief, and what they were putting inside him, I don't know all the details yet. I had to investigate a little bit more on that. But we do know that the PCA was actually set up incorrectly, and this is the cause of his death. And so this is the reason why we need funding for sickle cell support groups, because we actually need not just those people with sickle cell, but their parents, their friends, their partners, to be able to go into hospitals at the same time and be that watchful eye. We need, young sickle cell warriors to have mentors, so they can help, people who are living with a condition to navigate life, to navigate hospitals, because these sort of tragedies, unfortunately, continue to happen. They continue to happen. And even though this new treatment has come online and we're hearing about, there's going to be 350 people who are going to be, get the treatment, there are still thousands of people with sickle cell who are still going through, kind of like horrendous experiences in the A&R department. They're not getting pain relief in time. It's causing their body harm. And it's as the chair of the sickle cell support group in Hackney, a brilliant young man called Courtney, and he says, it's killing me softly. That's what sickle cell does. It's like, you have a crisis in your arm, but what's happening by being starved of oxygen in one region, it's like, it spreads around the body. And so what happens is your lungs not getting the same amount of oxygen, your brain's not getting the same amount of oxygen, and slowly but surely your organs are getting prone to failure. So we need this kind of funding. We need this kind of continuous support. So I do want to big up Sickle Cell Society, all those support groups up and down the country that are doing this work, and the National Lottery for actually opening up their purse and recognizing that's just needed. But please, please, please don't take your eye off the ball with this one. It's an ongoing problem, just like prostate cancer, but this one's not treated with the same seriousness of prostate cancer because it only affects people with African heritage. And thalassemia is for people who have Mediterranean backgrounds. That's the term there that they use. Okay, you're listening to me, watching me. I keep saying listen to me. I'm so used to the NSAPO radio program from years back. You're watching me. I'm doing the Pan-African Community News Network. We're live on YouTube and Facebook, I think. I'm here with Sister Oleander. You're welcome to put something in the chats and stuff like that. So please feel free if you want to ask a question or make a comment or share something. I'm going to go through the story. We're halfway through the program, another half hour to go. So I'm going to keep going on. So that's the name of the treatment. I try and read it. Crizanlizumab. That's the treatment. 300 a year to receive treatment for sickle cell crisis management. And it is just management of sickle cell. It's not a cure for sickle cell. There is no real cure other than like bone marrow transplant or stem cell splicing and new kind of treatments that enable the body to create blood cells that do not have the sickle inside them. But again, this is probably another thing for another program. So let's go back to domestic news of the more traditional state, and this is where we have the ridiculous announcement made a couple of weeks ago. Was it a couple of weeks ago? A couple of days ago, actually. I think it was last week. Government Minister Nadeem Zahawi, he's in charge of that department, and he's put out a statement banning, or banning the teaching of racism or the cause of racism in schools. Now, the guidelines are described as guidelines against political bias. That's the argument that they're using. It's got nothing to do with being against. This is all pretty much about helping teachers to make sure that they stay neutral when they're sharing their stories. Why is this problematic? Well, if you read the guidelines, they're online now. They kind of clearly say that, look, you can say racism is bad, but you can't say what causes racism. And what they do, which is really outordinary and outrageous actually, is they highlight, for example, you cannot use groups like Black Lives Matter. This is, I'm not saying it's outrageous, this is government guidelines naming a social movement that champions, kind of like, equality, justice, fairness, tackles, Afrophobia, deals with anti-racist, but the government is saying that you cannot refer to them in your teaching practices. You cannot talk about white privilege. You can't even talk about white supremacy, but you can say racism is bad. So, there are many people who are outraged about this, teachers themselves who are confused. What can we do? How can we get around this? Should we get around this? I'm not going to lose my job if I talk about Black Lives Matter. And this is exactly what the government wants, right? This is part of the package of measures, including the policing bill, which is designed to really terrorize good-minded people into not doing the right thing, staying silent on structural violence and injustices and institutional racism. So I just wanted to share that, and there's a few other stories to come back to that, which I'll talk about later on. So why is this important? Well, we know that it's not enough just to say racism is bad. We have to understand how racism manifests itself. Why is it bad? Why in particular is Afrophobia still in place? Why? And Afrophobia, for those of you who are unaware, I don't use racializing colors terms, as you probably know. So I don't say black people or white people or pink people or yellow, green, red, orange people. I do tend to talk to people about their ethnicity. And what happens is that Afrophobia is on the rise, and trying to find out exactly how is key to us working out how to eradicate it. And so we have to do research, we have to do studies. And so this new report by the Black Women Leadership Network has found out that actually 68% of African women are experiencing racial bias or some kind of harassment at work. That's almost 70%. And I think it was around, 48% of them have actually resigned because of racism. So this is what's taking place now. This is the real deal. This is the situation, and many people don't quite, kind of want to acknowledge that. But that's why we have to not just say racism is bad. How is it bad? Where is it bad? How does it manifest itself? What measures do we need to devise and put in place to get rid of it and eradicate it? And without that data, without those discussions, and it starts back from school, because it all starts with education, or I should say miseducation, then we're kind of like just going round in circles. So that's why that guidelines by the government is so toxic. How another way it manifests itself. This is a story I picked up from a couple of days ago. This is a story of Darrell Kawuya. He's a trainee doctor based in Nottingham, and he just told a story. And we've probably heard this one before, unfortunately, but it's still taking place. This is 2022, about a patient who refused his treatment because he was an African. I mean, literally, they just didn't want him to treat him. They were calling him, "Oh, you little black boy. Just I don't want anything to do with you." That's their language, a little black boy, And he was just shocked. He was horrified. Now, thankfully, the trust, the hospital, they supported him. They backed him. There's no space for racism, and his allies came to his assistance, and the treatment took place, etc. But this is what's taking place. This is what's happening now. This is not from 30, 40, 50 years ago. This is from a couple of days ago. And then for those of you who think, well, I'm not really interested in all that sort of stuff, that's, you know, just give me my sports and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's a safe space. It's all, you know, kind of like in meritocracy. It's about, you know, sportsmanship on the pitch. And there's no racism around there. Well, no, that's not true. Because if we look at the statistics that are coming back from racist incidents on football pitches, we can see that the numbers have trebled since 2015. There have been police arrests for racist incidents. I think it's Arsenal. I think it's Arsenal, Tottenham, and Wembley, if I remember correctly. You know, you can see from here what's taking place. So when you don't deal with racism at its root, when you don't deal with it right at the beginning, you know, when children are socialized, when they're learning, and you kind of embed those toxic ideas, then it grows and it manifests itself, and it's never quite dealt with, and so it seeps into life in every aspect. Every aspect of life that we address in social, cultural, spiritual. So I spoke about the church, I spoke about sports, I spoke about politics, I spoke about education. It's everywhere. Employment. So that's why, you know, we have to talk about this, and this is why we have to study this. And so there are some people trying to do the right thing, and many of us will be familiar with the face of the young Marcus Rashford and the amazing work he did during Corona lockdown, holding up with the account and just trying to get them to do a decent thing and feed children who didn't have the money to have like nutritional meals. I mean, you know, I don't know why he should be having to do that, but that's what he engaged in, and that's good for him to do that. But now he's actually launched a new scheme to encourage young people to read, and it's aimed at primary school children. He's working with who is it? I've forgotten the name of the organisations now. Burberry's one. I've forgotten the other one. You can find out online. But the point is, he argues that when he was a young person, he wasn't into reading because he didn't see himself represented in it. He just didn't feel it was for him, you know. And he doesn't want young people to go through the same things. He's already had some books going out with diverse representation. And when I say I even hate using these kind of like buzz terms. When you say diverse representation, just having a representation of people of African heritage for children to see themselves normal, not tokenized. And so this zine is him continue along that path, and it's a wonderful thing. And I think he's not just setting a role model for young people in the UK, but also for those footballers and those people who we call media personalities who have the wealth, they have the influence to do something more, and often they're silent because they're scared of losing a little bit of income. You know, this is good that he's doing that. Where are we? Okay, let's talk about someone else who's doing something good, and this is an ex-Man U striker, Odion Ighalo, and this is something he did in 2017, and I think that this is an amazing. Oops, Daisy. I think we've gone forward. There we go. I think it's an amazing story. I can't believe, and I don't understand why the Sun, which is one of the most racist papers in this country, decided to cover this story. I don't particularly care really in this particular instance, but it is a good story. You know, because we have a footballer or an ex-footballer who's actually using his own money to set up an orphanage, £1 million, or the equivalent of £1 million in Nigeria, to help young people who are disadvantaged. And he's set up in the same space that he was raised, that he grew. He didn't want, to kind of have this wealth and not give back. And he talks about giving back to society, and I think that is amazing. And I grew up in a time when we couldn't look to footballers as role models in the sense of social role models, as kind of like ethical role models. We had to look at them as kind of like I don't know, the way people look at musicians, right now. We have to look at them as celebrities. We aspired to be footballers, but we didn't aspire to be like them, like on a personal level. And now it's good to hear of these kind of stories. I mean, there's another one. I mean, this one is the Birmingham City captain Troy Denny. And this story touches my heart because he heard about what the government was doing with this policy about, kind of like a political bias and stopping people from learning about racism. And so he took money out of his own pocket and he commissioned a YouGov poll. And I don't even know about YouGov. YouGov are this organization, they go around the country, they find, like, in this case, it was 1,000 people, and they ask them questions on a matter of the day to find out what are the facts, what do people think. Let me post up. And so he went around, YouGov went around, and did this poll, and it found out that actually 72% of teachers wanted more support when it came to teaching about issues of cultural diversity. They just don't know how to do it. I think only about 16 or 70% were confident. And then on top of that, he also then sent an open letter to Nadine Zawadi, the education secretary, saying, don't do this. We need more. We need more education. We didn't just take a knee during 2020 just for the sake of it. These are real issues. And he identifies as someone who's dual heritage, and he says that he has children now, and he doesn't want them to go through the same traumatic childhood that he did, not knowing who he was and being ashamed of his identity and all these kind of issues. It's beautiful. And like I said, he's putting his money where his mouth is. He commissioned a piece of research to actually find the evidence from the teachers themselves about what they wanted. And that touches my heart. That really does. Okay, we've got 15 minutes to go. You're watching myself, Tony Betu, on the Pan African Community News Network. I'm here with Sister Oleander, and you're free to chat or post questions or anything like that before we close. I think we're doing reasonably good time, and I should ask Sister Oleander, are we okay time-wise? Are the pace going good? Can't see you.
Yes, sorry. Sorry. Yes, we're going good. We've just got the thumbs up that we are coming over loud and clear, and we can be seen too. So yes, it's great.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go to the next story, and that is one. I'll say next story. Sorry. That is the story. That was the last story. My bad. I'm going to go to the next section of the program, and this is something that's quite new. I am not going to commit to being able to do this continuously because it's just more and more work. But this is what we used to do, Jan Zappo, the Pan African Drum, and this is when I miss my young spar, brother Kwabna. We used to do the wind down zone where he used to wind everyone back up. I try to go through the news. There were many other news stories. I'm going to say that right now. Some of them were horrific, from the murder of a young sister on Valentine's Day, from the case of Tasha failing. So people who have been Sasha, who'd been shot, and I think she's still in hospital from what I can see. That case fell through. There was a man who had raped his grandmother and then killed her, and then abused her body sexually in death. There were loads of other stories that I could have shared in the last 10-15 minutes, and I made a decision. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try and get the balance right between kind of like what we must know, because it's kind of like contemporary, it's in the media right now, and what helps us, what can uplift us, and so if you think I've got the balance wrong, please feel free to tell me. But sometimes when I tell those stories, it messes with me. I can't sleep. The energy just goes off. But I have read them all, so I still had to process them. But I don't want to transmit that to you. But if you do need them, perhaps we'll do something. Maybe we'll do another program which is just pure negativity news. That's what news tends to be nowadays. But anyway, let's go to this new section: community reviews. And community reviews, what is it? This is kind of what Legali used to do. This is what I want to get back to. It's going to take some time. We're working on it, and I want to say thank you to all of you who have been being with us. Our website, the Legali website, has been down for a couple of weeks, so there's been no access to our articles and stuff. I know we haven't done any updates for a long while. And those of you who want to make donations, has been a bit of a challenge. So thank you for being with us. It is back online. This is one of the issues. We do host our own website. We do host our own radio station. It's not hosted on any other. It's not on GoDaddy or any of these other networks. We host it ourselves. And this happened because 20 years ago, we'd made some comments that were supporting African people. And our provider who hosted our website at the time, they disagreed with us and they deleted, I think it was around 5-10 years worth of comments, and we just lost all that data and we couldn't get it back. And I just swore that I didn't want to do that again. Now I'm going to have to find some backup while I'm not living in Legally HQ, because that means that the server can go down and we can't turn it up, we can't fix it within quick time frame. So I might have to put some temporary something in place, and I'm overdue a newsletter as well. I need to write something out to all of you out there. I never get this because we still have thousands of you on our newsletter, and when I say kind of like, do you want me to take you off, you can kind of send back no, and like hundreds of you say no. And then when we stream live, it's like, the figures are crazy. So I'm going to keep doing this, even if this is one of you watching, because I know that this will, maybe one day when I'm an ancestor 100 years from now, hopefully will help our community to avoid the pitfalls that we are dealing with now. But anyway, that's my rant. We need to move on. Thank you, Sister. This time we need to move on. Okay, so community reviews. Let's start off. We are Black and British. I haven't got enough time to deal with this one. This was a BBC program. It's part of a strand of the BBC's series BBC strand called Black and British. So there's a lot of programs in that strand, but this particular one was a 2-part documentary where they took, I think it was 6 Africans out into the Cotswold, put them in a house, all different personalities and characters, and they just let everything go crazy. And I did watch it, and I mean, I was saying to Oleander, it was disturbing. I mean, I don't know why I watched the second part. I knew what was coming after the first part, but you kind of like want to hear these things because you still can't believe that these views. Well, I can, but it's important to recognise that as a community we are diverse and we have a wide political views, and our political spectrum is wide, and that's fine, that's okay. But these kind of programs are not the forum for addressing these kind of things. I mean, first of all, the premise was all wrong. I even hate the image with cups of tea and stuff like that. But the premise was all wrong. The editing was butchered, some of the arguments, and the big issue that wasn't being dealt with was that of shadism or colorism, and many many of the times you could see that. Oh God, I don't even know if I can do this one in time. Many of the issues that were being addressed, there weren't Africans who should have been in the room there to articulate their point. And so we were lucky to have Brother Kinde inside there, kind of like pushing back and giving some kind of common sense on some of the issues. But of course, it's 6 people in our program, and so the editing is going to be ruthless, and it was. And so you kind of get this pop, kind of like a fluffy kind of interpretation of what it means to be African and British at the same time. And so I'm not sure how useful it was, rather than just to show us how little things have actually changed. And while it's good that it touched on some issues of, kind of like about sexuality, about kind of education, and all, there were some good issues inside there as well. They were all done poorly. Sorry, but they were just done very, very poorly. And if I ever get the time, I will sit down and write something. I will critique it thoroughly, and yeah, we'll see. But that's one of the programs. I don't know what you think. You can leave comments afterwards and say you loved it, and when you're talking out your ass, you don't agree with me. Blah blah blah. It's up to you. What else? Okay, so this is a quick summary of some of the things. This is not a media program, what I'm talking about now, but essentially over the last week or so, I was just blessed to be reminded that there's some amazing people in our community, just amazing. So the week started off with a launch by Hackney Account, and Hackney Account are a group of young people who do stop and search scrutiny of the police, and they don't ramp, and they published this groundbreaking report. So it was so on it, just kind of like representing youth perspective. The police got vexed with them because they were telling the truth, and they're not used to people telling the truth. They're used to these scrutiny panels that are kind of like got no teeth. And so not only have they launched a report, they've now actually done a version of it in a zine format. So those people who don't really want to read kind of like the whole report with all the stats and the data, they can just kind of get the gist of it. There's some beautiful poetry. There's some great art in there. I'm biased about the art because my daughter, hey, big her up. She did some the artwork inside the zine. But I just want to big them up. It was an amazing event. They did some performances. And it was an honor to be there, just reminded that the next generation are not dropping the baton, but they're taking it up and licking people over the head with it who deserve it. I was also blessed to be invited to give a presentation at the Decolonising the Archives University of Repair, and that took place at the Museum of London. That was an amazing session. It was an intergenerational session. That's why I really loved it. We had young people asking some serious questions. Serious. And I say young people, I'm talking about, what must have been around 12, 13, about how upset they are with the state of education that they're getting at school and how they want it to change. And and answering just like basic questions, and you're thinking to yourself, as well as elders sharing some deep ancestral wisdoms about kind of like our rootedness, and it was an amazing session, and that took place inside the Museum of London, which has a history of being implicated in African enslavement, but yet taking the space, reclaiming it, reframing it. And there's going to be another event, I'll talk about that later, that's taking place there soon. And then yesterday, I was walking through Hackney, and I remember, hearing about this Hackney Cop Watch team that's just started up. And I'm like, they've been around for like a few weeks, and yet already, I mean, they've got I've got it in my bag and kind of like teaching young people. In fact, not just teaching young people, because we know that it's not just young people who get stopped and searched in Hackney; it's elders. Do you know what I mean? It's not just males as well; it's women as well. We're just got a guide and just making awareness of what people can do. And that is really important. The whole idea that, we have to comply. We had to kind of like just acquiesce to the application of force by these rogue metropolitan police officers. We don't have to. We have, we have tactics, we have methods, we have options that we can use. I'm not saying it's always going to be easy, but I'm saying that we can do these kind of things. And it was amazing seeing them there. And of course, my heart goes out to No More Exclusions, because I heard about Hackney Cop Watch being there, and I was a few minutes away because I'm actually in Hackney, and it was in an hour away. But one of the great things was that No More Exclusions were down there, and No More Exclusions they are amazing. They help us to think of a different way of conceptualizing schooling, and the idea that when we exclude, you might have heard about the prison, what's it called, the exclusion to prison pipeline. I can never remember the exact term, but when we exclude children from school, they're more likely to end up in the criminal justice system. And so if we know this, and we know the exclusions are often discriminate, they're often kind of like targeting young African people, especially those with African and African Caribbean heritage. And I say African and African Caribbean heritage, I don't want to differentiate between African Caribbean heritage, but sometimes we have to follow the data. So those of us with Caribbean heritage and those of us with dual heritage are often on the brutal brunt, of exclusions. And so having an organization, an abolitionist organization, No More Exclusions, forces us to think of different ways of dealing with this. And so that was just yesterday on Saturday. For me, it was a blessed afternoon. The sun came out and I was like, rah. It's kind of like that's a really nice, that's just nice to see people out there just doing their thing. Got a message that's come in. Great seeing your face again, bro. Been a while. And greetings. Hey, greetings, brother. Thank you. Lovely for coming and joining us tonight. I'm going to be here for another 5 minutes, but it's good to be here. It's just good to be here. It's good to be reaching out to everyone. It's very strange because we're not face to face as we used to be. Well, you can see my face, I can't see yours, but the world's changing and we had to adapt with it. So give thanks for that. Let me go to the next slide. The next slide is seriously talking about community events. And I think there's only a couple that I'm going to talk about. So the first one is about this exhibition it's actually not coming, it's actually taking place right now. It's the part of the Sowing Roots exhibition at the Garden Museum in Lambeth, and it's just highlighting the Caribbean horticulture in the history of British gardening. And we have this wonderful piece in the Guardian by talking about Russ Prince Morgan growing yams in the UK. And so those of you who've got green fingers are interested in this kind of area, this is something else. We are everything. We are in everything. We are everywhere when it comes to recycling, when it comes to science, when it comes to music. We are everywhere. So please, this exhibition is interesting. Go and check it out.
I'm just going to say that I'm going to go and see it. Trust me, I'm going.
Yeah, my wife is the green fingers one in the family. If it's down to me, well, everything will just wilt. So like, yes, it's definitely a good one. Definitely check it out. Now, this one's not a community event, but I put it inside this community section just really quickly because it's Lambeth doing a consultation on changes on the toxic symbols that elevate and celebrate the name of white supremacists and enslavers. And it's going to be online. It's going to be taking place on, I can't remember the date, I can't see it there. Is it the 8th of March? And I'm just saying, if you have the time, log on, register. It's on Eventbrite and check it out, because I was kind of like, yeah, good, they're having a discussion, and I believe in public consultation, having discussions. I was all kind of optimistic until I read the council said the conversation would follow a retain and explain approach to these sites with links to African enslavement. And whenever I hear someone saying retain and explain, it tells me that they're morally compromised. So I think it's important that we have our presence in it. So I'm not a Lambeth resident, so I won't try and bamboozle the discussion. I just want to you'll probably just see my name on one of these Zoom links or whatever format they're using, just keeping an ear out to see what's going on, because I want the people who live in the area to have the final say and the main say. But we need to be involved in these discussions, or else what happens is that those members of the ethnic majority who don't have a good moral center, they dominate these discussions. And then what is that now that nobody's talking about Black Lives Matter anymore from their side, the status quo just remains, and we can't let the status quo remain. And I think the final event, which is taking place, there are other events taking place. I just don't have the capacity to also put together an events listing as well. Another event is, again, Decolonizing. The archives are hosting their University of Repair, and this is events taking place on the 12th of March. You can see it over there. Let me zoom up the screen so it's quite big for you. This one is Reclaiming African Technologies as Repair with African Time and Rest as Sustainable Methods, and this is with the amazing Janine Francois. So if you are free on that Saturday, please check it out. If you RSVP, then they'll also provide lunch, and their lunch is quite yummy. So so not only are you getting food for thought, you're getting food for your belly. So that's, I think, the last event of, oh no, that's the last event. That was the last event, but no, this is the last event. This is an idea, and this is the last one. Some of you will know that I teach anthropology at the University College London, and I teach anthropology of nationalism, ethnicity, and race, but this term I'm teaching decolonizing anthropology, and I'm just trying to do things differently. So my modules are kind of a little bit radical, or some of my students tell me, and so they seem to think, and it's quite nice and it's good, and we have good, honest discussions, and we are trying to transform the way anthropology is not only just taught, but the way it's practiced. So I'm actually having an open classroom session on the 11th of March in I think it's going to be from, what time's my session? From 3 to 5 o'clock. And you're welcome. I'm going to have to set up an Eventbrite and blah, 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 blah. It'll be based in Hackney, because I asked them like last week, do you want to do it in our class at UCL, or do you want to do it in the IDPAD Centre in Hackney? So I need to, any IDPAD members, I know I haven't discussed it yet with you. I'll talk to you soon. So it will be in Hackney, in the IDPAD Centre. But it is an open classroom. That's not really happened at UCL. I mean, the only time I saw something like that was when we had the brilliant Dr. Nathaniel Tabus Coleman running the Dismantling the Master's House program. And so I kind of want to do something around this, and just about rethinking, reimagining anthropology. So if you're interested in anthropology at all, interested in how do you get into it, what can we do, and more importantly, how do we use anthropology? That's one thing I'm interested in dealing with things like education, dealing with things like stop and search, dealing with things like toxic symbols in the public realm. And anthropology's got very good tools for dealing with those kind of issues. Then come down, share your ideas. All are welcome. I haven't had the chance to kind of like send out official invites and to set up an Eventbrite, and I will try and do that soon and make sure if there's enough time before the next program that I can provide a link or do a newsletter or something like that. But yeah, I'm making it up as I go along, just so you know. But that's me, hey. And it should be a good one. And with that, I think, yes, we're done. So I'm going to thank you. I want to thank our brother Colin, because this program could not have taken place without his research. Literally, I mean, he sends me these links and these stories, and I go through them and read them. But that, he does that core research. It's amazing. So I want to big you up. If I had like a sound effects or round of applause, I'll be hitting that. But I also want to thank you. That's our community, our supporters. Because I couldn't do this without you. And Sister Oleander, thank you. Do you want to give a wave to everyone over there? Because this is not easy. And yeah, we're still working out the format of this program. As you can see, we're still in the hotel. We actually came from another hotel this morning. Actually, it was in another hotel yesterday, and we've come to back to this hotel again. It's for those of you interested in our roller coaster crazy living exploration. So I have no idea where we'll be transmitting from in 2 minutes' time, but I'll be there. Like I told you, whether I have to be on my phone or my tablet or whatever, we'll be here. So please stay safe. Sun's starting to come out. It's still cold, so make sure you keep warm, but the sun kind of lifts the energy. And with that, I'm going to say as ever, may the ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Ashe.